Welcome to the bright side of aging. My name is Ike Engelbaum. I'm a pharmacist and the publisher of the American Senior Gazette newspaper, which actually is printed about every 90 days and is available on your web. And my mission in doing this program is that I strongly believe that you cannot help getting older, but you can help getting old. And that age is a matter of the mind. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. I try to interview interesting caregivers as well as people that are involved in taking care of seniors. And I hope to promote the message to seniors on how they can age gracefully and in a vertical position. And likewise, if they've inherited bad genes, how to outwit the bad genes. Our topics range from senior housing options, financial, legal, safety, travel, health issues, interesting senior events, but most important, on how to put old on hold. My guest today is a social worker by the name of Carolyn Johnson. Hello, Carolyn.
Hello.
Johnson. How are you?
I'm good.
And you are actually an active social worker. It's not like social stuff, right?
No, I'm an active social worker.
Tell me a little bit about your background. What degree and what certification do you have?
I have a master's of social work from Wayne State University.
Uh-huh. And then as far as your experience has been, you've been out in the field, so to speak?
I was a hospice social worker when I first started.
Uh-huh.
I started out in hospice, and then I transferred and I went to long-term care.
And as far as your involvement in social work, how long have you been doing that?
6 years.
6 years, I see. Okay. So I trust that today you're much more knowledgeable than you were 6 years ago, right?
Yes. Very much so.
I see. Now that's a real tough area that you've chosen to be in, Alzheimer's, unfortunately. And I guess maybe it's because of our times. You hear more and more about it. And having been in the care field for over 40 years, quite frankly, 40 years ago you didn't hear it as a diagnosis as frequently. Now, with all the technology, we're able to identify Alzheimer's much earlier.
Mm-hmm.
How would you, Carolyn Johnson, define Alzheimer's as far as what is the condition?
Alzheimer's is caused, from what they know, is it's caused from proteins, a buildup of proteins in your brain. And it's not proteins that you eat, it's proteins that your body makes. And as the proteins build up, they start to destroy the neurons. As the neurons become destroyed, you lose certain functions. You know, the ability to remember things, to talk, to walk, different things like that. So, you know, that would be, in a simple definition, the cause of it.
That's as far as the early signs. Have you, in the years that you've been in practice, have been able to sort of help caregivers identify
It's hard to identify it in the early signs. In the early signs, someone would probably still be working and going about their, you know, their business. It would be very, you know, slight things. They might forget events, misplace items, like maybe put their wallet in the fridge, you know, something like that. You know, not maybe look a little bit more disheveled than they usually do. Different things like that, but nothing that would really stand out and that you would say, oh, you know, that person must have dementia or that person has Alzheimer's. As it gets into the more mild stage, the moderate stages, that's when you're going to really, you know, be able to notice it more. There's, you know, it can affect their behavior. Out in public, they can be loud. They will maybe have trouble, you know, taking care of themselves. they get their days and nights mixed up. So that's when it becomes really more apparent in that, you definitely know something's going on. They might, not be able to drive, forget what to use utensils for, different things like that. So you would notice it more. And obviously in the, in the severe stages, you lose a sense of basically who you are. You can't walk anymore. Sometimes you can't talk. It affects your ability to swallow, your ability to eat, things like that, which in the end, that's when we usually call hospice in for those times when it's, severe and you're at the late stages. But that, those stages can range. It depends on when you're diagnosed, and the rate of progression is different for everybody. And a lot of factors come into play, your ethnic background, your family history, the lifestyle you lead, the age you are when, you're diagnosed. All those come into play. It could take 2 years, it could take 20 years. It just, it depends. So everybody's going to be different.
Mm-hmm. Well, the good news, if you can say good news about having Alzheimer's, is that it's not necessarily just progression of becoming more and more debilitated. In some cases, the progress of the condition is not that quick, and that's hopeful.
Right. I mean, everybody's going to progress at different levels. Some people may progress fast. Some people, it may take 20 years. Mm-hmm. So it just, it depends. Everybody's different.
Right. Now, you made mention of medical history. Can you go in depth a little more? Is it something that, as far as inherited type condition, I mean, have you seen anything in your practice that indicates that that's a big issue, or is it just...
I can only talk about what I've seen. I mean, obviously it's not scientific because I'm not a doctor, but, family history obviously plays a part. We have, family members who, they have a long history of it. Their great-grandparents, their grandparents, their mothers, their mother's sisters, their siblings. So, there was one resident who, she had a family history, and she prepared very well, not knowing or assuming, that she was going to get Alzheimer's, but she was proactive just in case this is, what I get. And she had everything done, everything prepared. She had long-term care insurance. She didn't want her kids to have to
deal with that situation.
Right. So, and she's probably the most proactive person I've ever met. But like I said, she had a long family history.
Right. Well, it's interesting how some people react to the condition. I heard a couple of cases where people that are writer types and have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, they've actually committed themselves to writing like a journal of their progression. I found that so fascinating because they saw it happening, they described it, and I think that really is sort of a ray of hope for other people that, there is various stages. Now, I realize you're not a doctor, but you got a fancy title of master's associate. Is that right?
Yes, I have a master's degree.
So you're that much further above, I guess, above a regular social worker, or what does a master's do for you, as far as
a master's level is a specialized. Basically, you can have a bachelor's of social work, which is a general practice. When you get into a master's, you specialize. So you pick a certain track. Like my specialty is cognitive behavioral therapy. So I have it's a micro. So it's basically a one-on-one or family, and it deals with cognitive behavioral therapy. Where other social workers can go into macro, and that's more community, helping on making large-scale changes, like within your community. Mine's a micro, small, personal.
So you're more individualized.
Individualized.
Well, that's great. And you're over at Lourdes
Senior community.
Senior Community. And it's a pretty expansive, and I say that A-P-A-N-S because expensive. Tell us about how many units do you have over there?
We have 4 buildings. We have independent living, assisted living, we have a memory care unit, and we have a nursing home. And they're all separate buildings.
Ah, well, I was very impressed, and in fact, what I particularly think is one of the nicest features of your type of a situation is that when a patient is admitted, or they can start off in their independent living center, correct?
Yes.
And if things don't seem to progress as well as they should, all their records are there. They already know the staff.
Yep, there's a continuum of care.
Right.
So that's part of, you know, what my job is. Since I'm in all the buildings, I get to know a lot of the residents. You know, I'm not in one certain building, so I know many of the residents, you know, in the assisted living, the independent living. So as they transition from building to building, you know, I kind of follow them from independent, depending, assisted, memory care, nursing home.
Right, right.
So.
Well, the wonderful thing that I can see in those type of settings is that, let's face it, from a practical standpoint, every human being would like to be in their own home forever and ever.
They would.
Right?
Yes.
So here you take a senior who decides that, hey, I can't handle the home anymore. So you've already made one move.
Right.
So that's what I really admire about Lourdes, is that you can go from building to building. It's not another move. Oh my God, you probably could carry this stuff over.
A little bit more than that, but.
But I don't do any heavy lifting, in case you got any ideas
no,
about.
either.
No, okay, all right, well, that's fine. As far as the whole aspect of dementia and Alzheimer's, you made mention earlier about some of the early signs where you suddenly are fearful of driving and you're forgetting things and what have you. Can you spend a few minutes talking about if you were to distinguish dementia versus Alzheimer's, what type of differences can you detect?
It's not so much the differences. Dementia is a broad category. It would be like cookies. Okay, there's chocolate chip cookies, there's vanilla cookies, things like that. Under dementia, you can have Alzheimer's. You can have Lewy body dementia. You can have vascular dementia. You can have frontal lobe dementia. And all of those have some similar characteristics, but yet different characteristics. So it's, you know, you can never specifically diagnose Alzheimer's until someone passes away, you know, and they, you know, because they look at the brain and different things like that. You know, dementia can be as simple as, you know, you start to forget things and it's just a memory issue. Alzheimer's can be a little bit more complex because sometimes you have different things that figure into it. You may have different behaviors. If you went to the doctor and you said, you know, I'm concerned, I'm forgetting this, and, you know, I missed this, and I put my wallet in the fridge or something, he might say, you know, come to the conclusion that you have dementia. But if you go to the doctor and you are doing all those things, plus you have, you know, different issues along with it, if it's a little bit more complex, he might say, well, then maybe you have Alzheimer's. Right.
Well, and we're going to get back on that topic, plus some of the activities that go on in your day job. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Prescription drug abuse is a national epidemic. The new in way to obtain drugs is through parents' or grandparents' medicine chests. Removing prescriptions from your cabinet is the best way to keep drugs out of the hands of our young people. We've got to work together to protect our teens, our seniors, and our environment. Clean out your medicine cabinet today. Please participate in Operation Medicine Cabinet and drop off your unwanted or expired prescriptions at one of our law enforcement drop-off sites in Oakland County. We can't ignore this situation anymore.
And we're back with Carolyn Johnston. Did I pronounce that correctly? I do not want to mispronounce your last name. And for those folks that missed the first segment, we were talking about Alzheimer's and the difference between dementia and some of the signs of Alzheimer's. And you're a social worker over at Lourdes Senior Center, Community Center.
Lourdes Senior Community.
5 buildings. Do you want to describe
4 buildings.
4 buildings, all right.
4 buildings.
What are those 4 buildings?
Independent living, assisted living, memory care, and nursing, rehab.
Rehab.
The nursing home.
Well, so you cover the various stages. Actually, my mother passed away a few years back, and she lived in Canada, and they've got a beautiful facility in Toronto. And I'll tell you something, if there's ever any sort of setup that anybody that wants to consider senior housing should consider when they go into those type of settings, that was wonderful for me because living here and having my mother 4.5 hours away, knowing that as things changed, she was able to stay on the same campus was just so peaceful for me. Which, since you're dealing with Alzheimer's, we were talking before we got on the air as far as the adjustment is concerned. When someone is admitted to the Alzheimer's unit, you were telling me that many times the adjustment period takes longer for the family. Is that right?
It does.
Right.
It does.
Right.
Normally, by the time the resident is moved to the memory care unit, Clausen Manor, it doesn't. It's the assisted living is 3 levels, and there's more people, so there's lots of places to wander. The residents start to look for other people. They get lost, they get confused, they're up and down on the elevator. It gets very overwhelming for them because it is so big. When they go over to the memory care, to Clausen Manor, it's small. It has there's 20 people there, it's 20 units, it's a rectangle. All the rooms are on the outside, so when you walk out of your room, everybody's there. The dining room's there, the TV, there's the TV room, the family room, there's a fireplace, the caregivers, the other residents. So they're not as anxious. They're not wandering around looking for somebody, not sure of where they are. And if they are looking for somebody, there's always someone there. They're allowed, they can pace, they can walk because they like to walk, so they can walk all day if they want. So I think it's they feel more secure. I think it's more comforting. I think they get a lot of more one-on-one because like I said, it is small. There's only 20 people there. I think the hardest is for like I said, the family members. I think it's hard for them to put their loved one, in a memory care unit. I think sometimes that they don't really see what we see. I think it's hard when you're the caregiver or you're the loved one to always see what someone on the outside sees. So I think sometimes they have a harder time coming to grips or, accepting what stage in the disease process their loved one is in. But eventually they come around and they get used to it. And, that, like I said, the memory care unit's small, so the families kind of have a bond, They talk a lot, they spend a lot of time together. So it's much more intimate than in the bigger facilities.
And the peace of mind for the relatives is tremendous. I know in my situation, I've been affected by it from an uncle, a cousin who has her husband in the Alzheimer's unit, and for her to know that he's in a safe area. It is amazing how I've seen in his particular situation where it's many times very similar to other diseases whereby he's got good days and some that are not so good.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, they can have days where they will not eat, they won't talk, they won't do anything. They'll sit there, they haven't walked in a couple days. The next day, they could be singing, they could be walking. Every day is different because, you know, you just don't know. And a lot of times, you know, the residents, I don't want to say they move together, but, you know, if you start out at the independent living and you start out at the assisted living, you know, you meet people and, you know, you form friendships. And when you move through the continuum, you know, when you move from, let's say, the assisted living to the memory care, you're going to know those people, you know. So a lot of times the faces are familiar, you know, to them. So I think that comforts them too.
Well, that's great. And I mean, I think that's fantastic that you have just 20 other people there. So there's probably, you know, we're, you know, supposedly high tech. We really don't understand the mind as well as we should. And you were mentioning about singing and what have you. Have you found, as I understand, you have music therapy there?
We do. We have music therapy. And she comes in and does music therapy, and the residents, they love it. They like to sing, they like to dance. They all have little iPods, and each of them is programmed with the type of music that that particular resident likes. They have a little speaker system in their room, so they can listen, you know, to whatever music they want. A lot of times the music will calm them. You know, if sometimes they'll have their headphones on and they'll start singing, and it's amazing what music can do.
No, I'm a strong proponent of music therapy, and especially the types of songs and music a person grew up with. That's one common denominator that almost all experts in the field agree upon, is that if you can go back to the person's past, further back you go, actually the more connection that you make. And one of the other tips that I've picked up over the years is that a lot of relatives and friends think they're helping the person suffering from Alzheimer's by talking about today's news. That's the last thing you want to do.
They like to reminisce.
They reminisce. Tell them about the playground at the high school.
Because as it progresses, it's like, you know, grapes. So, you know, the memories, your most present memories, are the ones that fade the fastest. You know, your short-term memory. So as it progresses, you basically go back in childhood. So they want, you know, when they talk about going home, they're probably not talking about their home. They're probably talking about the home that they grew up in. So they want that, you know, those old magazines or those old-fashioned clothes or old, you know, baby buggies or old music. You know, they find a lot of comfort, you know, in those things. And you'll see when you put music on, or when you play music, or, you know, sometimes when they go to church, you know, you'll have residents who don't talk or anything, but the minute that music plays, they can sing that whole song, and they know every word.
Isn't that wonderful?
It's amazing.
And it probably gives them such great satisfaction. Now, Lourdes Retirement Center there is going to have a series of educational programs.
Yes, we're going to have an Alzheimer, dementia, and memory care educational series. It's going to be approximately about 9 weeks. That's what it's set up for right now. Every week it has a different topic. There'll be a topic on medications, alternatives to medications, caregiving for the caregiver, hospice, end-of-life care, difficult behaviors, intimacy, how the intimacies, you know, because we have some, you know, residents on campus who are married, so, you know, your intimacies change with people. There's, I think, 2 movies that we're going to show. There's a binder, and every week you'll get different information regarding whatever subject we're talking about at the time.
And that's open to the public?
It's open to the public. It's open to residents, family members.
Oh, that's fantastic, because this way actually the residents themselves can possibly participate too.
Yes,
so,
they can.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Now, we hear about some of the to-dos and not to-dos in treating Alzheimer's. Can you speak for a moment or so about some of the myths about Alzheimer's that you found?
Well, you know, some of the myths are, you know, only older people, you know, are diagnosed with Alzheimer's. You know, Alzheimer's, if you're 65 and younger, it's early onset. So you can be 30, 40, 50. That's considered, you know, early onset. There's over 200,000 people diagnosed with, you know, early onset. Age 65 and over, there's probably 5.2 million people who are diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So you don't have to be older.
Right.
You know, it can.
Right. It depends, like you brought out, there's a lot of, yeah, unfortunately, that's one area that you really don't have one simple solution
No,
for.
you don't.
Because it's an onset of different conditions. And one of the things that I've learned is that the worst thing you can do is, if you are having some mental issues, it does not necessarily mean you have Alzheimer's. You should have it diagnosed, and there are specialists in that area, neuropsychologists that you should go to. And I think one of the reasons that we talk more about it now is that we do have more ways of detecting early signs of it. So, and the earlier, like everything else in the healthcare field, that you can catch something negative happening, the better off you are. I just wonder if you could take a minute or so and describe a typical type week for an Alzheimer patient. You have different activities and different
We do have different activities. They keep them pretty busy with activities. Like I said, they have music therapy. They have bowling. They they like to go out on the bus, and they go to like Dairy Queen, McDonald's. They do a lot of puzzles, a lot of
active sort of stuff.
With their hands, memory games. They have massage therapy come in.
Wow. So you had to rub that in, did you? Oh, that was a bad thing.
Yeah, they have massage therapy.
Well, that's incredible. Actually, you know, it's that's really something that seems to be prevalent in all the conditions, that you move it or lose it, and I guess with massage properly done, you can really make a tremendous difference in someone's life. And with all the types of situations that you've encountered, is there actually an area that, as far as activities are concerned, that Alzheimer patients seem to respond to more, or does it depend on the individual?
I think it depends on the individual. You know, some people really respond to art therapy. You know, some people respond to music therapy. It just depends on the person. And
well, wow, we've plumb run out of time. It's been a delight to have you on the air, and I only have enough time to leave with one of my favorite remarks, which is that yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, today is a gift, and that's why we call it the present. Please enjoy your present by looking at life in the bright side of aging.